of the Southern Conference. And I'm Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now, and SoCon John Hooper of Mid-Major Madness. Well, basketball season about ready to get underway. Well, it is underway, but the Southern Conference basketball slate about ready to get underway in earnest in about 2 weeks, right after Christmas. So let's talk about the big news, and it still is football. There's really one, I wouldn't call Chattanooga a glamour position, but that's kind of the biggest football coaching position in college that's still out there. What with Tom Arth going back home to Akron over the weekend, there hasn't been a whole lot written about who could be his replacement. SoCon John Hooper, who do you think the next head coach of the Mocs is going to be?
I mean, there's a variety of different places to look. I think you mentioned Billy Taylor earlier. I'm pretty positive he'll probably get a look. You could even look at George Quarles at Furman, the offensive coordinator there. Why not Mark Ivy at App State? He's the guy that, obviously was passed over for the head coaching job there. He's relatively young, and I think he can come in and probably do a pretty good job. So there's a lot of good coaches out there. Not only within, and then I mentioned Bobby Lamb. When they hired Russ Eastman before, he was sort of a candidate there. And then obviously when Russ Eastman left, there was some mention of his name. So there's several different ways you could look at a coaching replacement at Chattanooga, because not only I think there's some good coaches available within the Division I football ranks, but also right at home in the Southern Conference. So and locally, and guys that Chattanooga athletic director would know about.
Do you know approximately what that position might be able to pay?
At one point, the Chattanooga coach was paid. I know when Houston was there, I can't speak to what it is now, but I think it was one of the top 4 paid coaches in the SoCon as far as football coaches go. So I think they were 3rd.
Okay, because I know that Arth, now again, Arth is going home, and see, I've got a little bit of criticism of Akron. I said, well, this is why Akron always loses, is that they just hired a 9-13 FCS coach with 2 years recruiting experience in, Division I to come back home because of what he did at John Carroll. I mean, if that was the case, why didn't they just fire Terry Bowden 2 years ago and bring in the John Carroll coach? I mean, which would have been called, they would have screamed bloody murder, what 2 Zips fans there were and all that if they did that. But I think you know where I'm going here. The reason why Arth, I think, is going to be this coach, he's from the Cleveland area, and it's Akron.
Right.
And you know what? That means that he wouldn't have gotten a job at Ball State if it had come open. He wouldn't have gotten a job at, probably a great number of other FCS schools. And that is something I always like to say. I know some people said he was in the mix for the Charlotte job. I know he applied for it. How much the 49ers were actually interested in him is another story. But I always say, if you're going to be making some of those hires, ask yourself, would another team really be interested in this coach? And if they wouldn't, if you're only bringing him back because, well, he's from here, you might want to, or he's just coaching down the street or something, then that's the antenna. That's where you start saying, maybe not. And it's a big thing. Anyway, that was my take on the Arth hire and such. But let's talk about, you mentioned George Quarles. I mentioned, and we're just throwing names out here. I don't have any inside skinny. But I mentioned Billy Taylor. I saw where the student paper at Chattanooga and he probably is just, throwing out names as well, but he mentioned Mike Rader, the ETSU offensive coordinator. The reason why I think that I would be, if I was the athletic director at Chattanooga, more interested in Taylor than Rader is because I think ETSU's defense has been, both now and historically, far better than their offense. And I think that Taylor he used to coach at Chattanooga. He's a very loyal ETSU man, but if you offer him the head coaching position, he's got to listen. He's been there before. And he's a guy that I think you get some longevity with. 50-something, successful, and, you could get a coach there for 10 years or so. I don't think that San Francisco 49ers would hire him away from Chattanooga at that age and all this. Why do you think, though? Is it just because offensive coordinator, you think that more than defensive coordinator? Is that the reason why people you think might be looking at Rader, some of the other scribes, instead of Taylor?
I don't know if that really has that much to do with it because you look at some of the better. I mean, there's some great coaches there that have been defensive coordinators at the FCS level. But I think, he's nothing against Coach Rader. I know he's a great coach and does a tremendous job, but if you look at the coaches around the league, pretty much they describe Billy Taylor as having one of the better defenses year in, year out.
Yeah.
I know Bobby Lamb used to talk about when he was at Furman how great Taylor's scheme, the slant 50 defense, which is a version of the 3-4. And so, I think I think schematically he's very intelligent and knows the game plan. So that would, in a way, make him a great head coach. I mean, the best coach in college football is Nick Saban, right? And he's a defensive-minded coach. I mean, he's not a guy that's an offensive coach. Am I right? So, I don't see why he would say, there would be sort of something against having a defensive-minded or defensive coordinator as your head coach.
Well, we're talking to SoCon John Hooper and how the Chattanooga coaching position and the vacancy might impact ETSU because Mike Rader has been talked about in the media as a possible replacement, and I wonder about Billy Taylor myself. Some other names that I've seen now, the student newspaper I want to throw out, and we can, if any of these guys tickle your fancy, I will say this, but you gave 10 candidates. It's Chandler Morrison is the sports editor of the University Echo, which is basically Chattanooga's answer to the East Tennessean. And, all right, so you had Shane Montgomery, who was Charlotte's old offensive coordinator. That would be a nightmare, in my opinion. I saw them play Tennessee, and I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. They also like Rusty Wright, who is Georgia State's inside linebackers coach. Georgia State was 2-10 this past year. I know you like their coach, Sean Elliott. I don't. Okay, that's just good. Rader was one of those that was put out. Adam Fuller, Marshall assistant head coach, special teams coordinator. Jeff Jagodzinski, who, now this, it says Notre Dame High School. Yes, and the reason why is that he is right now a local high school offensive line coach, but he's in the area, and he has the NFL experience, and he was fired from Boston College after he interviewed for the head coaching position with the New York Jets when his athletic director instructed him not to, which is a lousy reason to fire somebody. Normally I would not choose to be my Division I FCS coach, to be an offensive line coach at a high school, but the man has a background and obviously he's biding his time there. Coached in the UFL with the Omaha Nighthawks, was the offensive coordinator at Georgia State. The idea, though, is, okay, but it's sort of a bumpy path right there. It's intriguing. Marcus Satterfield, he used to be offensive coordinator at Chattanooga. I don't think he would get the job. I think that, if you're, he quit ETSU for whatever reason to take an entry-level position at Baylor. There you go. He doesn't have the resume. I know he was 6-16 as the Tennessee Tech head coach.
Did they have Jimmy Lindsay in that article?
They did not have Jimmy Lindsay in the article. I'm going through some of the other things. And then he went to long shots. He went to Maine's head coach. That's not going to... They're just long shots here, and he even mentions them as long shots. I'm not even going to go into them. Iowa's offensive line coach, possibly, Some other names, though, that fans have kicked around. Kerwin Bell has had a lot of success at the old Florida quarterback, He's had a lot of success at Valdosta State. He also used to be the coach at non-scholarship Jacksonville. Here's something you didn't know about Kerwin Bell. He demands that all his football players sit in one of the front 2 rows in their classes. You know that? Okay, right there. So there you go. Will Hall.
I agree with that, though.
Yeah, no. That was a rule at Jacksonville. Will Hall, new Tulane offensive coordinator. Was he just too new with the Green Wave to consider going out there? Jeff Druden, Richmond offensive coordinator. You mentioned George Quarles. I thought that was intriguing. Jay Graham, the old Tennessee running back, was named. And the glamour one, I thought, if you get this would be a huge coup. Lorenzo Ward, who was the interim coach at Louisville when Bobby Petrino left, but his... it used to be Steve Spurrier's defensive coordinator when they were going 33-3 at South Carolina. Was the Jadeveon Clowney was one of his guys that he coached.
He had some good players on the while Spurrier was there, no question.
Yeah, he was the secondary coach at Virginia Tech during the Michael Vick era when they played for the national title. He's had 5 years in the past as an assistant at Chattanooga. And even although it was a poor year, had 1 year as an NFL assistant, 2006 with the 2-14 Oakland Raiders. He had Warren Sapp on that team. There you go. But no, I tell you, out of that name, if you could somehow get Ward, that's who I would want with that resume.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the high profile.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, outside of Jack and name recognition alone, you think would bring in recruits. So
anyway, the other guy that I'm over flooding people with names here. They can't possibly keep them all. But I just wondered, since the athletic director there, Wharton is from Penn State. There is a coach up there. He's the assistant head coach. And before I threw his name away, I had it right in front of me. But I thought that possibly with those ties and the fact that he had coached at Vanderbilt, I'm talking about Sean Spencer's the man's name. He's a position coach at Penn State. But yeah, I thought, okay, here's a guy, he knows Tennessee from being at Vanderbilt, albeit Vanderbilt isn't like even Chattanooga in terms of recruiting. It's basically, a nationwide search what you can do for the best academic prospects. But still, he knows, he's got to know something about Tennessee. He's not a coordinator at Penn State, so he's not going to be making more money.
They can hire Donnie Kirkpatrick then.
Yeah, I mean, that was one, but he didn't have, but did he have the success?
No, he just didn't have the support, pretty much. I mean, they pretty much didn't have a defense when he was, because they had a great offense there.
Okay.
Great offense.
The question, though, SoCon John Hooper, is, you mentioned Ivy from Appalachian. Yeah, I mean, won a bowl game, lots of enthusiasm, all this. But the first question, do you think that either Taylor or Rader would be, truthfully, a viable candidate for the Chattanooga job? Do you think that they could go that way?
Both of them would be, just because, well, I think maybe Rader more because, he's a little bit younger. But having said that, I think the way Billy Taylor has talked about around the SoCon for so many years, and as well as defenses, like you said, at East Tennessee State have performed over the years, his experience alone should make him a candidate. I mean, he's still in his 50s. He's not like it's super old.
I believe Rader is about 10 years, give or take a year, younger than Taylor. Taylor is young 50s. The thing that I look at is the ETSU example where they basically have been hiring 50-something coaches because they know that they're going to stay. That it's less likely than...
Started when he was like 25.
I'm sorry?
He must have started coaching when he was like 25.
Let me see when Mike Rader, what his age. I believe he's in his 40s.
Billy Taylor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he started very young, and I know he was Paul Hamilton's defensive coordinator. But
wasn't he at Wofford prior to that?
Yes, I believe he said, he had bounced around a bit. But yeah, I know Rader, of course, used to be a quarterback locally at Science Hill here. But no, the only reason, I understand why he'd want offensive coordinator, just that there's more big-time football. There's more Southern Conference football background with Taylor if they were going to go that way. And I mean, why wouldn't... Yeah, why wouldn't they go to Wofford then? I mean, why wouldn't
Right.
But if you were looking along those lines, yeah,
people are sometimes willing to hire a defensive guy.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people, and I mean, it's all speculation. I just listed. I've got 20 names here, and I'm thinking, okay, who could, I do think that the idea of Rader over Taylor is just the mindset of offensive coordinator above defensive coordinator. I just think that's how that would pan out
that's
there.
True in most cases when you're hiring a coach, they use the thing to employ. That's harder.
Of those names, though, like I said, if you could get me any one of them, I probably would choose Ward. I mean, you're getting Louisville's coach to come in, theoretically, this sort of thing. But of those names that I said, who would you think is the glamour candidate? Who would you, of the guys that I just mentioned, say that would be the best Chattanooga candidate? Boy, oh boy, that was a good answer right there. Of course, George Quarles would be also somebody that would fit that glamour mode. And if you're going to look for someone who used to be at Maryville, admittedly Maryville High School and all this, but he's had 2 years there at Furman, so he knows the Southern Conference as well. We got SoCon John Cooper back. There you go.
I don't know what happened.
You hit the wrong button. That always happens. Anyway, no biggie. No biggie. I'll be able to enunciate my words. All right, so here's a question that I want to ask. Who would you hire? You're Mark Wharton. Who do you hire?
Well, I mean, I know who my three candidates. If you mentioned Lorenzo Ward,
Yeah.
that would be one of them, obviously. I'd reach out to him. I'd reach out to Mark Ivey of Appalachian State.
You like Ivy? Okay.
Yeah, because App State's not so far removed from the SoCon and what they were able to do. There's a lot of good coaches. I mean, let's be honest. App State with them not going with Ivy, there's no more Jerry Moore influence, but there's a lot of coaches that were influenced by Jerry Moore out there that I think could build a winning program. So that's why I would say him. And then I would say the other two candidates would probably be Billy Taylor, like you mentioned. I think just because of his experience in the Southern Conference, what he's been able to do, over the years, for the most part, has had a consistently strong defense at UTSU, not only now, but back in the early 2000s and those years. I think back to some of the players he had, like if it was James Russell, Mario Hankerson, some of those guys. So He knows what he's doing defensively. And then, I mean, I guess if you look at guys that have had success in the state of Tennessee, George Quarles is obviously one that's won a lot of football games. And I'd be surprised if he didn't at least get a look or a phone call. Now,
and you'd think with Quarles, like now you can discuss what kind of talent there is in East Tennessee, but you would think that would be an opening to high school ties, to recruiting ties and all this. And he's got now the prerequisite experience that I demand as a college coach. He's got 2 years. And also are we just hiring him because he's from East Tennessee? Well, you get the idea that, you know what? I mean, would it ever really surprise you if he became the head coach at Furman one day for one time? I mean, I could see that. Or if he stayed, so he passes the tests that normally I would not say, no, we don't want a high school coach, but he's 2 years out for being that. So, and he was a very successful one as well. Quarles, I would say, Ward, I like Billy Taylor. I'd hate to lose him. And I think ETSU would be in a real mess if they did. Who knows if he was even interested. He's such a loyal ETSU guy. But you'd have to think, hey, I mean, we're going to give you a promotion here. You've been here before. If they were at all interested. So, a lot of ways you could go there. And so, anyway, we've mentioned some of the candidates right there, and it could influence ETSU. I know you're an Appalachian State grad so quickly. Eli Drinkwitz, I thought it was a very nice hire. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a good hire. I just, it's been so long since they've moved outside the carrying more influence. It's kind of different because you don't know what to expect. You knew what to expect with Scott Satterfield after he took over for Jerry Moore, so that wasn't that much of a transition. But I think looking at the success of the state offense, I think it was a very good hire from what I can tell on the outside of it.
All right. Let's see here. The next thing I want to get to, the top 25 poll is out. Furman actually fell a spot to 24, even though they defeated UNCW by 40-odd points, I think it was. I mean, it just a massive victory. Again, the Seahawks are struggling, only 4-7, but Furman remains undefeated. Got to figure their toughest game is next. LSU on the 21st. LSU's lost 3 games, one of them to the number 24 team then in the country, Houston. Now they're number 21. But yeah, the Furman Paladins, you believe that this is a very legitimately ranked team. Talk to me about this. Do you think that this is the team to beat this year now in the SoCon?
Well, I mean, I was very skeptical until Saturday. They had good moments in the games prior, but they just really hadn't shown the quality, I guess, in one game like they showed in the second half. So, I mean, we're talking about a 10-point game. I guess we're a little over 14 minutes left, 45-35, and then Furman goes on a 42-9 run. I mean, it's hard to do that. I don't really care who you're playing.
Yeah.
I think that just solidifies to me that they look more comfortable playing as a ranked team Saturday than they had in the previous, I guess, 3 games. So I think they're more comfortable with it now.
You think Furman, though, can stay in the top 25? You don't think this is their last chance, their last go-round, even if they would lose to LSU, which I found to be a little surprising.
They don't get beat by 50 at LSU or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they've got a shot. I don't think. I think if you watch the Kansas-Villanova game, and let's be honest, Kansas won that game, but Villanova gave them all they wanted. And you look at a Wofford team that's a really good basketball team that goes into Kansas and gets blown out. So I think most people would look at that and say, well, Furman's pretty decent if they went to Villanova and beat Villanova.
Okay. Well, I knew. Here we go. So the idea is we both think that the glamour candidate for Chattanooga, let's just go and round this up, because that's the big story in the SoCon John Hooper. It would be ideally Lorenzo Ward. You think you like Mike Ivey? I gotta sum this up. You like Mike Ivey Mark Ivey, excuse me. Mike Ivey was a baseball player from Appalachian State who led them to the bowl victory in New Orleans this week as well. I kind of like Sean Spencer at Penn State. Look for him. And we both are saying ETSU fans should be a little wary of Rader or Taylor. Those guys could be on the short list. Tri-City Sports. I got to go. Tri-City Sports Now. I'm sorry.